Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Derek Brown, Head of Institutional Sales Department, VPS Securities, and joining us today we have Mr. Leba Nam An, who serves as the Head of Capital Markets and Strategic Initiatives at MASAN Group. MASAN Group is the largest consumer company listed on the Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange, in fact the largest diversified consumer company listed on the Vietnam Stock Exchange as well. Leba Nam An, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here today.
Prior to joining Masan, Nam An has held leadership positions and roles across technology, retail companies throughout Vietnam, and also with international experience. In today's climate, what lies ahead strategically for Masan and the Masan mission?
Before diving into Masan's strategy, I'd like to share a brief overview of Masan with our audience. Masan is a company that, while perhaps not widely known, is deeply connected to the consumers. As you can see, these are Masan's products, from seasonings like soy sauce and Jinsu chili sauce, to instant noodles such as omachi, kokomi, and Wake Up 247. We recently launched this product in collaboration with Manchester City. Let's have one to celebrate.
Fresh Collaboration 2025 announced at the AGM, Masan and
Cheers.
Manchester City.
Yes, cheers.
And many other products with which consumers are likely very familiar. In addition, we own the modern retail chain WinMart. We operate 4,000 stores nationwide. Phúc Long is also a brand that resonates strongly with consumers, 200 tea and coffee shops across the country. We also hold approximately 20% stake in Techcombank, where I believe many viewers access financial services. So that's Masan. We aim to be closely connected with consumers. Let me share more about our strategy. Masan's strategy was previously shared with investors at our recent AGM. Our vision is to create what one might conceptualize as an avenue for products and services. Within this avenue, our products and services, as well as those from third-party vendors, are offered to 100 million Vietnamese consumers through our distribution network, 4,000 WinCommerce points of sales. Ultimately, the objective is to elevate the daily lives, both materially and spiritually, of 100 million Vietnamese consumers, to ensure that every Vietnamese household has a Masan product and every household globally has a Masan product. That's our ultimate goal.
You're also uniquely positioned to have your own distribution channel, which is the leading retail supermarket channel, big supermarket store plus also convenience and mini-mart box stores as well, aren't you? With WinCommerce, WinMart, and also the modern trade partners, and then, as you noted just before, the nationwide rollout of all of the other retailers that you've got as well. So talking about that, everyday brands, you're already deeply rooted into the Vietnamese community, and the fact that you've got 100 million Vietnamese retail consumers, you're incredibly defended against any global tariff introductions. Plus, you've also got the capacity to leverage the 17 existing free trade agreements that Vietnam signed with international markets. You can now export your products to the EU tariff-free when you've got your distributors there importing your products as well, haven't you? We'll talk a little bit about Manchester City and the collaboration there. It's in keeping with Vietnam doing the UK-Vietnam free trade agreement as well. So wish you every success with Wake Up 247 and your products that you'll distribute there. Before we get on to anything else, though, recent developments, as I said, the tariff potential there. We're in a time hiatus of announced tariff, and then it's been now delayed for 90 days. We've still got several weeks to go. What are your thoughts on this, mate?
For us, firstly, our businesses aren't significantly affected by tariffs. Why is that? Because exports to the US only contribute less than 1% of Masan's consumers' total revenue. The second largest export to the US is from Masan High Tech Materials, which encompasses our wolfram mining, extraction, and processing operation. Currently, these tariffs do not apply to such rare minerals. Therefore, the impact on our business is not significant. However, investors and viewers may also be interested in understanding how these tariffs might impact the consumer spending of 100 million Vietnamese people. Specifically, how will this affect Masan? Firstly, as you can see, our portfolio consists of daily consumer essentials rather than discretionary spending items such as dining out or other F&B experiences. These are everyday necessities. Even during economic turndowns, consumers still require fish sauce, chili sauce, and instant noodles. And notably, as you can see, for example, during COVID-19, our companies in seasonings and instant noodles sectors experienced very strong growth. And WinMart also saw strong growth during COVID-19. So I believe Masan's business model offers a defensive position amidst economic headwinds. Furthermore, I believe our government also recognizes that it needs to stimulate the domestic economy, where consumption plays a vital role. Hope that in the near future, policies will be implemented to stimulate consumer demand. Consequently, I believe companies in the consumer goods sector will also benefit from these market-driven policies.
When you were talking about defensive strengths, you were talking about, the daily use of your products. Some of these, in my family, my wife's Vietnamese, I have two Vietnamese little boys, and we use some of these things like your chin su, chili, multiple times per day. They'll have it at breakfast time, they'll have it at school at lunch, and then they'll have it for dinner as well.
Yes.
So the product SKU range that you've got there is, I think, like you noted, it's a defensive strength of your company. Strong Q1 momentum, you upheld that very, very strongly. Plus, you also had some extra kickers of the reduction in the debt burden of the related investment in Masan High Tech when you sold HC Stark balance there as well. So if we now look at the plans for 2025, BOD of MCH, they've approved the plan to migrate to Jose this year, which will be very exciting. Comments on that?
Well, firstly, as you mentioned, the business results of Masan's companies are performing very well. WinCommerce grew by 10%. Masan Meat performed well, and especially Masan Consumer in the last quarter grew by 14%. For instance, our seasoning category experienced growth exceeding 20%, and the Omochi brand, the premium brand within the instant noodle sector, saw growth of over 20%. This demonstrates that Masan Consumer is performing strongly despite the challenging economic climate. Consequently, from a business standpoint, we are very well prepared. Furthermore, during the past year, the board of directors has agreed to pursue an IPO in 2025. This initiative has received approval from our board. However, when assessing the market for a potential IPO, we consistently consider two aspects. The first aspect is whether the company is ready, and that means that our business is sufficiently robust, and when we go to the market, investors will be eager to embrace the IPO. The second is whether the capital market is ready, and that depends on many factors, influenced by the Fed's actions in the US, and whether IPO deals in the market are gaining traction, and evaluations of comparable companies in the market. So we consistently assess these two markets and are confident that the business will be ready this year. We need to reconsider whether the market is ready. That's something we'll continually monitor and make decisions on at the appropriate time.
So sticking on the capital markets, stock market arena, the performance of the markets over the last 12 months have been impacted by mostly extraterritorial global activities, changes of many multiple governments, whether it be prime ministerships in the EU, such as in Italy, or new chancellor re-elected in Germany. Then we've also had foreign currency volatility, Korean won, Japanese yen. In the global scheme of things, the Vietnamese economy has been very resilient. The government's still quite bullish of a target for 8% GDP growth. The currency's been relatively stable, particularly against some of the Asian currencies as well. Where do you see in that mix the price performance of MSN and the outlook for the remainder of this calendar year?
Firstly, despite facing economic headwinds, our government is still targeting 8% GDP growth this year. Earlier this year, the government clearly stated that to achieve this 8% target, the foundations for growth must come from public investment and private sector economic growth, with private investment being particularly important. Previously, exports played a significant role, but given the current economic climate, exports will be of lesser importance. Consequently, we observed that in the first quarter, stocks related to industries such as finance and real estate experience significant upside potential. As investors have confidence in government investment, in initiatives like public investment, and in the need for credit growth to provide businesses with the capital required for investment. So these stocks performed very well in Q1. Given the current economic headwinds, we anticipate the government to consider how to boost domestic consumption, as it still contributes approximately 60% of Vietnam's GDP today. Therefore, for Vietnam to achieve 8% growth, domestic consumption needs to increase. Consequently, we expect that when the government introduces measures to stimulate domestic consumption, consumer stocks will also benefit. At that point, investors who invested heavily in real estate, industrials, and financials in Q1 may find those prices elevated and then consider other stocks, such as consumer stocks, as domestic consumption requires stimulation.
So your company is renowned as a M&A expert company, looking at investment opportunities, acquiring them, engaging international partners to participate in your activities, good, strong, long-standing list of institutional shareholders from around the world. Would you like to just talk us through one of the more recent M&A deals, the Crown X? And in that you had a fair bit of portfolio optimization, restructuring there.
So what that means is, first, as you've seen, Masan Consumer recently raised capital from existing shareholders. Why did we do that? we need to provide that context to explain the Crown X story. This is because we expect to go IPO for Masan Consumer as per BOD's approval in 2025. We recognize that first we must improve access to Masan Consumer stock, which addresses two key objectives. First, we need to increase the volume of shares traded on the market. So the fact that we raised over 230 million shares increases the stock trading volume on the market. Secondly, prior to the share issuance to existing shareholders, the price of Masan Consumer was approximately 230,000 to 350,000 dong per share. This price point presented an access barrier for smaller retail investors. Therefore, when we issued new shares, the price decreased to below 150,000 dong per share. This makes it more accessible for individual investors. Upon the capital raise for existing shareholders, the chart illustrates that Masan Consumer Holding holds over 90% of Masan Consumer, the company that's about to go IPO. Masan Consumer Holdings is not participating in this round. And now you see that we only hold 70%. However, Masan Group's strategy is to ensure that we maintain ownership of over 65% of Masan Consumer Holdings, the company about to IPO as seen in this chart structure. Therefore, we are repurchasing 7.9% of the Crown X to increase our stake in the Crown X and consequently maintain ownership of over 65% Masan Consumer Holdings.
That's right. You still retain an over supermajority shareholding position in that post all of the.
And we also increased our share in WinCommerce because the Crown X also owns WinCommerce. When we increase our share in the Crown X, we also increase our share in WinCommerce, which is a retail chain that we have great confidence in. This is because it currently has 4,000 stores and we continue to be profitable in Q1, and we have identified a business model that once launched is assured of success. Consequently, we are very confident and aim to increase our stake in WinCommerce.
Now, late last year, Q3 2024, MSN saw the extension of the put option by SK for 5 years. So there's no immediate concern or necessity for raising cash or any of that type of activity there with that particular shareholder. I think we don't really need to dwell too much on the other existing shareholder mix, except to say that there's now a large new cohort of investors in MCH through the recent M&A activities and capital restructuring that you've enabled through the Crown X with MCH. So the key takeaways for Masan that you'd like to leave for the investors for VPS, in your words?
When you consider Masan Group, I believe there are three key points to look at. Firstly, Masan Group offers everyday consumer products, just like these. With WinMart, consumers still need to purchase food and other essential items. Therefore, whether the economy is thriving or struggling, Masan is positioned for sustainable growth. As you've seen, we experienced strong growth during COVID-19 and that growth continued into Q1. As you consider the company for investment, we believe we can perform well regardless of the economic climate. That's the first point. The second point we want to highlight for the audience is that I see a level of security for investing in Masan's group at this moment. I recall that in November 2023, when the VN index was about 1,000 points, our stock price traded at 60,000 dong per share, around 60,000 dong. Currently, the VN index exceeding 1,200 points was still trading as of yesterday at 62,000 dong per share. While the VN index has increased by 20% over the last 1.5 years, our stock price remains around 60,000, which we believe to be a relatively safe floor for investment. That's my second point. The third point is that many investors might also think that's great, but why don't we just directly invest in Masan Consumer or Masan Meat? Why invest in Masan Group? That is a valid question. So, what does Masan Group bring to the table? Masan Group is in fact a company that connects all of Masan's products and services through its retail network, 4,000 points of sale, which plans to add 800 to 1,000 new locations each year, reaching 100 million Vietnamese consumers. It's not just one single product, channel, or consumer. As I shared at the beginning of the interview, it's an avenue where products and services are sold to 100 million Vietnamese consumers through our 4,000 outlets, growing to 1 to 10,000 in the future. That is a differentiating factor for Masan Group compared to smaller players in the industry.
So thank you very much, Mr. Lebanam An from Masan Group. Steve Brown wishing everyone from VPS Securities on behalf of VPS a very good day.